it to you. He gon' give it to you. X gon' give it to you. He gon' give it.
Hi. Thank you for tuning in. Since the last time we did an episode, a fly became the most important thing on social media. And I'm sure that you looked at it and looked at memes and told friends about it, but that's in the past now. And now you're watching this. And I really appreciate it because I have two really great guests on today. A friend and a stranger who's now, I consider you a dear friend now. You just moved here recently, right?
I did.
And then you're literally here as a friend visiting in Austin.
Yeah.
So
nailed it.
before I introduce you, I'm going to have you introduce yourself. I got some rapid fire questions that I want to ask you, and then we'll take it from there. Cool? Okay. Name?
Sarah Foreman.
Age?
32 as of last week.
Woo!
I know.
You made it.
I know. It looked
we
great,
were
huh?
worried. Place of birth?
New Orleans, Louisiana.
Favorite horror movie villain?
Oh, man. The Shining. Jack Nicholson, The Shining.
Okay.
That's
Yeah.
a good one.
Gotcha.
I watched the trailer for it the other day for the first time. It's freaking terrifying.
Wait.
Did you see the
I
movie?
had never seen the trailer, though. The movie
Okay.
is nightmares. There's what nightmares are made of. But the trailer is just like elevators opening and blood coming out
Yeah.
slowly.
It's interesting how much trailers have changed
Yeah.
since the 70s or even since the early 2000s. Because even back in the 2000s, it was still the in a world, one girl stands up against corporate America. Least favorite Jersey Shore character?
The short one. What's the girl's name?
Snooki.
Snooki.
And a one-line synopsis of the movie Titanic.
Not something you should watch in the third grade like I did.
Steamy car scene. All right, good job. Name?
Laura Papa,
Age?
31,
Place of birth?
New Orleans, Louisiana.
Love it. Favorite musical?
That is so tough. Maybe hard between Wicked and there was one that I've seen. I witnessed one in London that I thought was beautiful, and I think it was like School of Hard Rock.
It's because she hasn't seen Hamilton yet.
I haven't seen Hamilton, and it was a big discussion last night. I'm going to be watching it before the end of this weekend.
You're just reassessing your life
Yeah.
and figuring out what's
I've
wrong
had
with it,
to.
but you haven't seen Hamilton yet?
It was a
so.
big force, too. Yeah.
I saw Wicked in London, and I'm not a big musical guy, but that was just kind of a like When in Rome type thing, and that was the play that was currently featured. I specifically went there wanting to see American Psycho, the musical, which doesn't sound like that would be a good idea, right? Have you seen American Psycho?
I've seen the movie.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, so they made a musical out of it. Seems like a bad idea, right? Right.
I have so many questions.
And then it's scored by Duncan Sheik. He's the one-hit wonder, Barely Breathing. I'm barely
Yeah.
breathing. But he's actually a super prolific guy, and he scored 3 musicals. Each have won Tony Awards, and I love him. And I'm not for musical reasons. So I need like a reason to get into a musical because I've never liked like Guys and Dolls in Oklahoma, like Sunshine and Rainbows and Puppy Dolls. Yeah, I can't get on board with that. But things like Chicago, Book of Mormon, Hamilton. And I have to admit, I was judgmental on the surface of Wicked at first. And then I listened to some of it and I was like, oh, this has kind of like a dark.
It gives you that other side.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
And then seeing it in a theater that's built for the play is just kind of takes it to a whole new level.
Absolutely.
So
I haven't seen Book of Mormon yet, and Chicago as well. And those were 2 in the top must see. So I will hope to put those on that list.
so they're must-sees, but
yes.
you haven't seen-
I can't dedicate that and say I absolutely love it just yet because I don't know.
all right, we're going to get back to that in a second. But one-line synopsis, or no, least favorite Sex and the City character.
Oh my gosh, perfect timing. Carrie.
We just
I did a deep dive on both of you before this, as I do with all of our guests, and I went through your social media and your trash, which I know is inappropriate, but I needed to get a firm understanding of who I'm talking to. So-
Truthfully, it's got to be Miranda for me. I mean, Carrie is whiny. We have made that discussion and point valid in our conversation earlier about an hour ago. But Miranda, to me, is annoying as well. And there are reasons being, I think it's also because I'm a fellow redhead, and that is
She doesn't
always,
represent your people well?
well, I don't like the stereotype. I don't stereotype with others, so I would hope that it doesn't stereotype with me. But alongside, like, I don't have a soul, so I can definitely relate to the South Park side of things. But when it comes to
Sure.
Sex and the City, I'm like, I don't know.
So with a show like that, where I'm older than both of you, but even when that show was in its prime, like the new episodes were coming out, I was still on the younger side of things, but I could even tell that in the moment it was influencing pop culture, or even just like inserting slang words or certain like sexual topics would like really rise to the top if it was something that was featured on the show, in a similar way that, you know, Friends or Seinfeld would do that, but without censorship. So do you actually think that there was something that show was doing to propagate any kind of actual redhead stereotype?
Absolutely. That and the Cosmopolitan. I mean, as far as the cocktail world goes, they have stereotyped what women drink and how New York lives and what women do as far as
You're saying Cosmopolitan, the magazine.
The Cosmopolitan cocktail.
Oh.
I mean, that is like
Cosmos.
the staple that's the staple cocktail for
You're saying Miranda.
Miranda in general, for what I
Fuck Miranda. Is
yeah,
what we're saying.
I'm like,
It's
I don't even want to
official.
talk about Miranda. Oh no! But as far as Miranda goes, I think it was definitely alongside she seems a little crazy, and a lot of people say, "Oh, she's got red hair. She's got to be crazy." No, I then she settled down with this baby, but then she still had that other side of crazy. It was like a new level of the onion the new layer that you've peeled away.
Yeah, exactly.
So there were just different layers that I've noticed that they've personified as far as redhead goes.
Interesting.
And they put it all in the Miranda character and then developed it into publicity.
Do you feel like when you watch a show like that you understand that it's fiction, but do you feel like those are at its core real people? Do you feel like those characters in a show like that are based off of real people?
No. Yes and no. I think they've done a lot of people watching,
Sure.
and definitely among their popular crowd. But I don't know. I feel like they have taken a bunch of generic stereotypes and culminated it into one. They've just taken and compiled them into one big lump.
But do you like the show?
No.
Oh, okay. but enough, you're familiar with it and you've watched it.
I am familiar with it, yes.
Did you feel obligated to watch it because it was, well then why did you watch it if you don't like it? I guess that's my question.
It's one of those things where if your friends, you're all together and they want to watch it, I have no problem watching it. And it's great. It's great.
Oh, it sounds like you do have a problem watching it.
You have to stay on top of things, you know?
That's-
You got to know the lingo.
That is true. That's true. Okay, good to know. So that brings us to the beginning of our show. So Sarah and Laura, thank you very much for being here. You guys are officially the 4th Mind Meld guests. So just as I was explaining downstairs when we were having this delicious mezcal that we're going to talk about more in a little bit, but my focus for these Mind Meld episodes is more talking about just general living in Austin and like your social life and your dating life and things like that. And I thought it was particularly interesting having you on, Laura, because, and I'm going to, something I don't like from theater is people say each other's names while they're talking to each other. Do you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And I think if you do that in normal life, it would come off as horrifically condescending, Laura. Right? If I'm looking at you, Laura, and I'm saying your name, it's like, yeah, I know that you're talking to me, but I'm also just cognizant of the fact that we're filming this and recording it at the same time. So just for the benefit of the listeners, I'm going to be saying your names a lot.
Totally. And I respect that because
And maybe that wouldn't bother you. It would bother the shit out of me if I was just, because even when I hear that in plays, I'm just like, okay, we get it, dude. There's only 2 people on stage. We know who's being talked to. Anyways, so I think your story is particularly interesting because you recently moved here. We just met 30 minutes ago. Sarah, I know you from kind of an interesting circumstance of we were basically brought together through advertising and through an agency that's in New Orleans.
Yeah.
So we're going to get to that too. But I want to start, Laura, with why don't you give me the elevator pitch of how y'all know each other and then bring that up to current day of what brought you to Austin, especially during a pandemic.
Oh, okay. So Sarah and I met through high school friends. We went to different schools. I went to public. She went to private.
And this is in New Orleans?
This is in Southeast Louisiana.
Not New Orleans?
Not New Orleans. It was across the lake in St. Tammany Parish.
Across the lake. So something I learned recently is that, not recently, but I used to work for Evinrude. They do outboard motors. And I've been to New Orleans, I don't know, 24 times or something. And it's easy to think as an outsider, and I apologize. It's easy to think because it's on the water and because you have this perception of you're in a pretty much a different world that is as south as it gets. And then I started working with the swamp people. Like
Have you
the
been to
show.
Fouchon?
Yeah.
And I went to Morgan City,
Yep.
which is I think 90 miles
Oh,
south.
it's the tip.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, and that's like the fucking bayou, and it was a really interesting experience. So anyway,
yeah.
but when you say across the lake, what lake are you referring to?
Lake Pontchartrain.
It's the suburbs. We grew up in the suburbs of New Orleans.
Perfect. Yes. Yeah, that's exactly it.
Okay,
And
please continue.
so Sarah was known to actually have some really great parties when her parents were out of town, and not to divulge anything that she might get in trouble for, but I think it was a lot of fun because we had a very similar style, and I didn't know Sarah, but a lot of people who were friends with Sarah that I was friends with, they were like, "Oh, you're the Sarah Foreman. You're the Covington Sarah Foreman." And I never got that. I never understood what
This
it
is
meant.
like Prison Rules. Did you beat up the biggest person in the yard?
Notorious about
Yeah. Sharing a story that you may not knew.
17-year-old me.
Yeah.
Way to go.
Okay.
I finally got to meet her at one of her house parties, and
One
it
of
was
many,
really nice
yes.
because I met her, and she was just automatically like butter, like the nicest thing ever, and it was easy, just super great to talk to her.
What a shining endorsement.
Yeah, and then we didn't really talk after that for a little bit. Then
Why's
we went to
that?
college,
No,
high
why-
school. No, there was we
Maybe not
still
so
weren't
buttery.
friends.
That's what I'm picking up.
Not so much of that butter, now more
Yeah.
salt. We actually, just because we didn't necessarily have, like in high school, it was different. We
Well,
had
and you went to
dynamics.
different schools?
We did.
Okay.
We went to different schools, so it was a lot more different.
Yeah,
there.
that's hard to.
Once you go to the
maintain.
same school, which we did when we went to LSU, it was completely different.
Coincidence?
I guess so. Yeah, I would say yes.
Is it popular? I think it's popular probably in any state for people to go to like their state school, but specifically in Louisiana, is there like a sense of pride around that? Is there like a real desirable, like a lot of people want to go to LSU?
Yeah, so there's actually a program in Louisiana. I'm not sure if it's still around,
Bring
but
that just a little
when we
closer.
were
Not your body. Bring the mic closer to you.
So when we were graduating, there was actually a program in Louisiana that it was essentially if you made like all right grades, you kind of got into LSU for free.
Oh.
And so it was like, well, we're going to go to college for free, and then we're going to like get really into football culture and not go to class
Did that
because
happen?
it was for free. So yeah, that kind of,
Explain okay grades.
if you showed up, you kind of got okay grades on the North Shore in Covington, where we grew
I
up.
don't want free college.
Yeah, let me preface. I went to the public school. I was in AP classes, and I purposely did not do the reports and whatnot in my last senior year project to prove that I would pass. And she still gave me the lowest A possible. I was like, either you really like me, or this is a discussion that needs to be had with the school board.
So I'm assessing you in like real time, just so you know, as I would with anyone. But since you're on the show and we're doing like a deep dive into you, and again, I just met you 30 minutes ago, but I can already tell that we have some connective fiber here. So
Awesome.
I graduated with honors from high school. And did you have age of majority in high school? I'm sure it's probably named other things in other places, but when you're 18 in your senior year, that you can like act as your own parent. So like you can show up with a Dave was sick note signed Dave.
Oh, no.
You didn't have
that
that?
would be
No.
Okay.
amazing.
So we had that. I mean, it requires your parent or parents approving it in the first place. And my mom was fucking rad. So she did. I skipped. So in my senior year, you can set up your schedule. So I had it that I had 2 study halls my first 2 hours. And then I had independent study, which you could do in any topic. And I did it in music. And I was creating my opus, which I had already created before the semester started. I was like, I'm going to go work on this. And then 4th hour, I had the early lunch. So I didn't show up until the 5th hour of high school for 180 days straight. And every single day I showed up with Dave had a tummy ache, signed Dave. And I still graduated with honors. But 2 days before graduation, the truancy officer or whatever found me in the hallway and grabbed me. And she's like, I could have you fucking expelled for this level of abuse. I was like, can you just check the grades real quick? Like, just by what criteria, do you have to pass? In a similar sense, my capstone, did you have a capstone class in college? My capstone teacher failed me on the grounds that she assessed me as that I didn't care. The work was fine. I did everything that I needed to do, but just her general assessment that was substantiated in no way that you don't care. So she failed me, which would have resulted in me redoing my senior year. But it went up to the dean. It was a whole thing. But anyway, I'm just saying, there's a little bit of like an intellectual rebel thing that I'm getting from you that I feel like
so I did a lot of things, especially during my senior year, just to prove a point. And
do you like punch a cop?
oh no, but I did.
That wasn't until later.
Yeah, I was like, that is a
get
definite
there.
later story.
Yeah.
There are things that have happened with cops or on cop cars, but not like
Whoa.
physically, not physically with them. It was, don't worry, groups
Like
of friends.
like a Beyonce video?
Like,
Yeah.
running out on the streets and falling on my knees, busting my knees open in front of a cop car that was in the middle of driving and almost run me over situation.
I love it.
Yeah.
You're wearing a very lovely pantsuit. Was that
Thank you.
or a jumper? Romper?
Jumpsuit?
Romper?
I don't
Jumpsuit?
even know. That's a good question.
Is it so for those listening? It's a lovely kind of springy array of different floral arrangements and colors, and but is it in the inside? Is it lined? Is there something in the knees to like protect you because you've learned from your previous transgressions that at any point in time you could just get wild and end up skinning those knees, or are you just risking it?
Well, I mean, now in about a week, my tailor will have those installed.
Oh, good.
So
good. Is
so
that the
with
first thing you
that
did when you moved here? Is get a new tailor?
Genius idea. Yes, actually, I do need to find a tailor. That
Love
is
it.
my number one thing. I have great timing again. We have I have a sack of clothes that are going to the laundry, which I almost gave the tailor my my pets. So they
Good
crawl-
story. It's a good story in here.
Your pets?
So I have 2 bunnies.
Mm.
And they crawled into the laundry bag that I was bringing to the tailor. This was literally 3 days ago. And I just ran a quick errand and I was putting everything in the car. And I remember picking up the sack and I was like, wow, I didn't realize I had this much stuff. It was heavy.
Right.
So I just swung and threw it into the car
Wow.
and, ran those errands in the middle of the heat and went back home, had a call, took care of that. Got ready to leave again, and I was going to give them their midday snack. Couldn't find them for over an hour, and I had to retrace my steps thinking about what was strange or different that day, and I remembered the laundry bag. So I ran to the car in the garage, opened the door, and ripped open the bag, and there they are, just hanging out. Over half of my stuff is chewed whole.
Sure.
Yeah. Much bigger holes than anticipated, so the tailor's got a lot more work on her hands, or
that's
his
salvageable?
hands. That's a good question. We might have to get creative. Maybe make it a Mardi Gras outfit.
She's also acting like she wasn't like losing
I
her
was
cool.
sobbing.
I would think so.
They're my therapy pets. I didn't really know. At first, I never expected to get bunnies. They were party favors. But that's not supposed to be derogatory towards them either.
No, but explain that.
So I have a teammate in the Houston area who I stayed with her and her family, and they live by a beach. And so, they have this piece of land where they raised all of these animals, and her youngest daughter actually breeds bunnies. She would always ask me, she's like, you want a bunny? You want a bunny? I'm like, no, I don't want a bunny. Why would I? No, they're smelly. They're like ferrets. She would laugh at me, and I'm like, okay, this is not a joke to me. I'm preparing to get myself an English Mastiff. And she was like, no, you're not. You're in a 650 square foot apartment above a garage.
That was honestly your plan?
Yeah, I wanted one. So that's still a life goal. Like I need an English Mastiff in my life just to make sure that I know I can handle the responsibility.
Gotcha.
It's just one of those things.
Sure. That would not have worked in a
It wouldn't.
studio.
I've gotten turned down twice, by the way, for that.
Oh, okay. All right.
Just because of the body mass of them and me, they were like, that's not going to work. You need a body leash. But so one day, over the weekend, I was sitting on the couch and all of a sudden 4 tiny baby bunnies sat on my chest. And there was one very little one that just came up and put his nose on mine. And I couldn't help it. I was like, okay, I have to take this home. I have to take him home. And then a few weeks go by and I knew with my traveling schedule that he would eventually be lonely, so I decided to adopt his sister. And of course, having a brother and sister is very concerning situation with bunnies, especially. So immediately had to get them spay and neutered.
Oh.
Yeah, that was interesting. But Big Chief and Big Frida are fine now. They're
Big Chief and Frida?
Big Chief and Big Frida.
And with rabbits, is it, and I guess I don't know this about most animals, is it typical, basically inbreeding? Is that common?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I think so. And it's just, if you're not smart about it, if you want to control that, then absolutely. Yeah, you have to take those measures and be smart about it.
When we have a group text message with all of our friends. There's 5 of us in this group text message, and it's lasted since 2011 when all 5 of us lived together in this big shitty house in New Orleans. Our group text message. So Laura one day was like, you guys, I got rabbits. And like most friends would be like, what the hell are you doing? Like, why did you get rabbits? And all
this is while you're living with the 4 other people?
No, this was pretty recent, like in the last year or two.
Gotcha, okay.
But we got this message years later. We've been friends for a long time, and no one batted an eye. We're like, of course Laura got rabbits. Like, here we are. Laura has a couple of rabbits. Like, and they're cute as hell.
So college. You guys live together.
Yes. Yes. So sorry. We actually
fine.
got
This is how
well
this-
off
this is
of
how
that
this always
topic.
works. Again, I told you downstairs I have an agenda. We'll get to 2 things on it. It's fine. But so bring us to the Austin chapter.
Oh, okay. So I actually moved over to Texas because I started teaching myself about wine, and I was bartending at the Roosevelt Hotel and, working over there. And I met my former coworker who actually recruited me to work for this international wine company. And then they eventually transferred me over to Houston, and I
Okay.
became their retail account sales manager for the state. And, moving forward, moved over to what our industry calls, quote unquote, the dark side, which is the spirits industry.
Ooh.
Yeah, bum, bum, bum. But it is a lot of fun. I work for an incredibly wonderful company on an particularly great division. There's 12 of us in the nation that I couldn't be more proud of. We're really, I take pride in the fact that we're the dorky ones. We're really geeky, and it's okay.
In terms of your craft and the industry.
In terms
and
of our
okay.
industry. And so this kind of goes back to what we were talking about. We notice on the sales side where there's just numbers. They want to crunch their numbers, hit those numbers, and they're blank face. That doesn't
Sure.
matter. Anything else is outside of that.
Yeah.
For
You just,
us,
real quick, you just get this a little bit closer to your mouth.
for us, it's a little different.
Mm.
We want to dive deep into that. We want to understand the origins of our industry. And we also understand that our industry is more or less an art and not necessarily just about crunching numbers and making that money like every other person would in the sales side.
Sure.
So that is why we intertwine with our sales teams, and we urge them to embrace the geekiness, embrace the
Sure.
nerdiness, and understand, the intricacies of.
But you're like behind the scenes. So do you feel like that level of attention to detail and the history and the crafting and the aging and everything, is there particular spirits that you think either consumers or liquor stores or bars and restaurants, like, are there types of spirits that you think people are more inclined to give a shit about understanding the history behind it, as opposed to like, oh, I know Jack Daniels, I know that name, we'll get a fucking case of that.
That's actually where the balance of salespeople and us come into play, because you actually have to look at the consumer trends
Yeah.
to see what's trending right now. And of course, for the past 5 or so years, agave spirits, mostly tequila, has been in the upward trend and the number one in demand as far as that goes, but then whiskey and vodka too. So what we've noticed, the consumer trends are that people around our age profile are really interested in understanding what quality spirits are and
Yeah.
how they were made and the history involved with it. And that's kind of where we come into play, where we're like, do you really want to hear about the history? Do you really want to get to know this stuff? Because we can enlighten you, but it might get scary.
It's gonna get
Hello,
weird.
Halloween. Yeah, no, it's a lot of fun. It is. It's fun to understand the different demographics of people too, because you really just have to tailor it to that
Sure.
to better understand what level of education you're going to bring them to.
Yeah, I mean, like, some people are snobs, which has like a negative connotation, but there is a sense of pride and joy that comes from like, I'm so intimately familiar with the sourcing of the food that I'm eating, or what I'm drinking, or the clothes that I'm wearing, or the local establishments that I go to, or the who made this guitar that I play or something. And then there's other people, I guess the other end of the spectrum is there's people want to get fucked up.
Right.
And sometimes I'm sure that those people, I'm drinking this mezcal right now. It is absolutely delicious. And I'm sure the person who just wants to get fucked up would also like it, but you could also give them some like Kroger level swill and they'd be like, oh, this is pretty good too.
Anytime that I hear fucked up, I immediately think, oh, so when you think tequila, you think shots. And that's the sad disconnect right there, because I'm trying to reteach people that tequila is not meant to be taken as a shot.
Sure.
I mean, if you want to take certain brands that are well known to be put in shots
Yeah.
because of, their marketing schemes, I think that's great. And by all means, go ahead and do it. But if you actually want to enjoy quality spirits with tequila and mezcal involved,
Yeah.
then you should probably sit down and help your palate learn a little bit more. Let that palate develop and mature to better figure out what you particularly like.
Sure. Yeah. So Sarah and I are from the advertising world, and I've had the opportunity to work on quite a few different beer, wine, and spirit brands. And one of my favorite / not so favorite experiences was I got a chance to pitch Jägermeister. which is still at its core a multi-generational family-owned business out of Austria or Bavaria or something like that. But they distribute it and then license it. So like North America just has kind of a blanket agreement that like you give us a fucking storage container worth of Jaeger, and then they agree to certain things like we'll use your logo and, you know, we won't change your font, things like that. But when you look at the way that Jaeger is marketed in Europe versus the States, like Jaeger in the States is what's the drink that you think of when I say Jaeger?
Jaeger bombs.
Jaeger bombs.
It's college.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. And then they also do like they're in the last 10 years, they've been big on like they sponsor metal tours. So like Megadeth is going out on tour and it's like co-sponsored by Jägermeister. So we get this opportunity to pitch Jaeger. And even though we would be working on the North American component of it, it still needs to be approved by the family, the like core family in Germany. So we do this pitch, and what in any kind of marketing scenario, you want to express to your potential client in the same way that you're geeked the fuck out on your spirits is that we understand not only your history and your product, but also your demographic. And you know, we've even seen this on things that we've worked on, but like there's a big difference between the way that you want your audience to perceive you and then the way that they do perceive you. So when we talked to Jägermeister, we showed them basically the virality that was associated with Jaeger. And at the time that we did it, that my new haircut video was big. It was basically this like jacked Jersey Shore type dude, and it's at the beginning of it is like a fucking protein shakes, bro. Got a new fucking haircut and fucking skanks, and it's a satire of the like prototypical alpha male frat guy that lives off of Jaeger bombs. And for a long time, Jaeger in and itself was, even if you wanted to do shots of Jaeger, it was just assumed that it comes with Red Bull. There's even a TED talk on this in the kind of societal phenomenon behind it. So we put all this together to prove to them that like we understand who your actual audience is. They took such offense to this. These are guys who think that anyone, let alone Americans, are in like silk smoking robes, sitting next to a fire, having Jaeger in like a Swifter and discussing geopolitical movements. And they were so taken aback by the fact that we would shit on their brand.
Oh, yeah.
Like this. And we did not win the business.
Well, I mean, and it's one of the things that you've identified what is the obvious. You know, you have helped them understand that this is something that is already prevalent. You, as a base consumer, this is what you see and this is what you interpret it. Mm-hmm. And that's telling. And I feel like that was a good thing. And people need to realize that if you're going to have, and what I can't necessarily call and label Jaeger under, but I would identify a certain category spirit as the...
Sorry, the resident dog just trying to get in. All right, sorry, continue.
No, I think that's very telling, and it's truthful, because Americans have a way of skewing into their own. They personify things into their own way, and they make it this new trend, and they market it into a totally different direction that the owners of the brand may not necessarily appreciate or enjoy, and that's completely understandable. Mm-hmm. But if they're trying to understand the consumers that are buying and what's keeping their sales dollars so strong, they're going to have to understand that that's what it is.
For sure.
And this is Jaeger bombs, like exactly what you were saying, Jaeger bombs. And that's sadly that
you can't.
I know.
I
think I just made up a word.
Frat boys stop drinking.
You can't.
Jaeger. So sometimes you need to embrace it. So the reason that we got the opportunity to pitch Jaeger is that the agency I was at had Corona. Corona is what piece of fruit is Corona synonymous with?
Limes.
A lime.
Yeah.
So early on, like in the 60s or 70s, when Corona was getting launched, that was not the pairing. And in the surfer community in California, they started putting limes. First, there's just so many limes out there, but also Corona's not the most flavorful beer. And it became just the Jaeger and Red Bull hand in glove type thing. Like people just assumed, because it happened enough, that if you order a Corona, you get a lime. Corona initially was like, fuck you. Like, our beer is so great. It does not need, so much so that they lobbied against the lime industry to block shipments of limes into California to try to curb this from happening. And eventually they got leadership. They're like, dude, this is it. This is our thing. We didn't plan it. We didn't want it, but this is how people have embraced it. So now you lean into it. Now it's in every single marketing thing, and it's so.
And now it's Limes and Snoop Dogg. So
It's
actually, I had this conversation about a week ago about how even like musicians don't always get to pick their audience. Like, in their head, when some musicians, like when they're creating this, this great album, this great song, they have like, they think it's going to be like fellow punk rockers or like whoever it's going to be. The example that came up was Smashing Pumpkins. Like they didn't expect to be like the frat bro like album at some point. And like they thought they were going to be like much more hip than that. And, like they ended up being like the frat bro anthem for a minute.
Which is interesting.
Yeah.
You can, because you can pull one song from it. So
totally.
Melancholy and the Infinite Sadness is this super epic double album that they do, and it has these incredible songs in it. It has a story arc, and it's amazing artwork and everything, but you take one song, like Zero, and you get dudes be like, yeah, man, I fucking bench pressed to this fucking song. I love the Pumpkins. So, yeah, that's interesting. I want to get to New Orleans because I love it, but I want to ask you, just to wrap up your story, what general area of Austin did you land in? How long have you been here, and how are you liking it so far?
Okay. So I don't really know what area. I guess it would be south of the river.
We're practically neighbors. Yeah,
awesome.
yeah.
Love this.
Gotcha.
We'll have to exchange sugar sometime.
Yeah.
That didn't mean what you think it means.
How much like searching did you do before landing on a place?
Actually, it's taken me months because I was planning to move pre-COVID, and because of COVID, I had to push it back at least 3 months.
Happy to have you in Austin. Looking
Thank
forward
you.
to sharing sugar. Sarah, let's talk about you. I'm curious. So we met each other through work, essentially. We both do something similar independently. We help out agencies, and sometimes those agencies bring in third-party vendors to do things that they either can't do or don't have the bandwidth for. And you and I just ended up basically getting pulled in by the same agency and met because of that. And I think this is only the second time that I've seen you, right?
Yeah, actually, we met this next weekend last year because it was the week before Halloween. Because we had this ridiculous night out. We had this huge group night out. That
makes me uncomfortable just thinking that much amount of time. This whole year has just been this like weird fog type thing. But yes, so that is, it's, you and I had an interesting experience in terms of that. Like we met under very professional circumstances and a lot of like first impression type stuff too, right? Yeah. We're both representing ourselves independently as third-party vendors, strategists, whatever. We want to make a good impression on the agency that hires us. Then they bring us to their client, which we basically carried that whole thing. It was our job to pitch on behalf of this agency. But then also in that same weekend, we got to go out and have a fucking great time. And you took me and my friend to Preservation Hall. And it was for Halloween, and
at like a burlesque cabaret show.
And that was fantastic. What is the performer's name?
Her name is Boyfriend.
Boyfriend. I loved that. Everything about that was so cool. I love, for people who are not familiar, can you just talk a little bit about Preservation Hall?
Yeah, so Preservation Hall is a music venue in New Orleans. It's been around since the 1960s, early 1960s, family owned, second generation. Typically, it's a jazz venue.
Real quick on the history, though, if I understand correctly, it was a white-owned business, and they were one of the first, that they were all about integration, and they received some serious pushback, but they were pushing forward.
Totally. Yeah, it started off as an art gallery, actually. And then Sandra and Ben Jaffe, when they came to New Orleans on part of their honeymoon, in the 60s, I guess, and they saw it, thought it was cool, went back to where they lived up north, and then packed their bags, moved to New Orleans, and ended up purchasing this space and turned it into a music venue. And so they, Alan Jaffe was one of the first. He was a white musician playing with a lot of like black musicians in New Orleans in the 60s. Jim Crow era, it wasn't as traditional. New Orleans has kind of been an island all along. Like everything has been a little untraditional in the town since its inception. So yeah, the space is really cool, and it's kind of like a mecca for New Orleans artists and New Orleans musicians and people from around the world who like music or jazz to come listen to a show. So we had, the night that you came and joined me was kind of an untraditional thing. Around Halloween, they put on a 3-part cabaret series with this musician Boyfriend, who's a female rapper in New Orleans.
There's going to be like a URL at the bottom.
Totally.
It's fucking awesome.
She's so cool.
Cool. Yeah.
So, Dave and I had never met in person. And so, invited him to the show, sent him a link, couldn't pick up the vibe, thought it might be a little obscure. So I remember very vividly you asking, so we have to be in costume, like on a scale from 1 to 10, how costumed are we getting? And I was like, like an 8. Like,
Because
really,
some people go
yeah.
hardcore with
Oh, yeah.
this and like like custom made shit. They probably
yeah.
work with your tailor, I'm sure. They bring it. But other people are like, oh, I bought something out of
name's
a
Sarah
fucking
Foreman.
plastic bag, a sexy nurse, $20 or whatever. And like, I am not like super artistically or like, aesthetically minded. I couldn't put together some sort of like amazing thing, but I'm down to invest in it. Like if there's an opportunity. For
Oh, yeah.
Will be our
pieces.
friend. It
love
is
it. Can't
going
wait.
to be great. Just
Yeah. So I remember
You did. You gave
Waiting-
me a huge list of things that ran the gamut of like very conservative. Like this is a great brunch place, and you get a lot of sunshine to like get fucked up at this cool weird cabaret show.
it's what I do.
Yeah,
What do you
and I loved it. I thought it was so great. Not only the music itself, but going into that venue, which is essentially like a time capsule.
Oh, yeah.
Right there. I mean,
There's
essentially.
still no, it's all acoustic music for the most part on traditional shows. Hopefully, fingers crossed, they'll be open again soon.
Foo Fighters did this show on HBO called Sonic Highways, where they go to 8 different cities. They dive into the music history of that city. They talk to living musicians from every conceivable genre of music, both classic to current, and then they record a song in a famous studio in that city, and then the lyrics of each song is based solely on the interviews that occurred before recording that song. Foo Fighters is my favorite band. This album is tremendous, but one of my favorite episode is New Orleans, and they end up recording at Preservation Hall, and that I've always it's in the quarter,
Oh, yeah.
but it doesn't
St. Peter Street.
yeah, so but it's not. While there is a demand and there's line for shows, it's you don't notice it as much as you do the other. I'm jangling with shiny
totally.
object over here kind of thing. But I've always wanted to do it. The people I've been with have not wanted to like wait in line or whatever. So You Take Me There was the first time I went there, but I've always wanted to go since then, and it was so fucking cool. Just even being there, but then the show itself is fully immersive. Like for the third act of it, I'm literally sitting pretzel style,
Getting money thrown at you,
getting
fake
money,
money.
thrown at me, and then there's like a sex scene. Like I could have touched him. It was so good.
I remember very well standing outside with a friend of mine waiting for you to come up, and you had someone with you also. And I remember being in like a coat and like what like Liza Minnelli and Cabaret would be wearing, like a tiny little outfit. And I was like, this is kind of a professional meeting, but like we're gonna
But
see
we
how
already
this
got
goes.
business out of the way, right?
Yeah.
We did our pitch or whatever.
I was like, well, we'll see
No,
how
but
this goes.
I think that spoke volumes about you. That
Oh,
your
good.
ability to have that kind of juxtaposition of professional and I don't want to say unprofessional, but just like you live your life. And so that was one of the things I wanted to ask you about is I love New Orleans. I've been to the quarter a couple dozen times. I've been to Baton Rouge and Lake Charles and some other places too. But like, it's my concern, and it was when I moved here, is that I'm gonna fall out of love with Austin. They're like, ooh, these weekends are fun, but now I've lived here for 4 years. Like, this place fucking sucks. South by Southwest, get the fuck out of here. Does the allure of New Orleans fade for you at all? Do you find Mardi Gras to be a pain in the ass? Do you avoid the quarter? Like, explain your current relationship with New Orleans.
Yeah, so I love it so much that my previous job was actually representing from a public relations standpoint, representing the city of New Orleans as a tourism destination for the world. And so my whole job was literally talking about New Orleans to the point where the N key on my keyboard at work had rubbed off because I was typing New Orleans so often. True story. So I love the city. I love the city. It's a great city, and I actually moved to the French Quarter in December to get even closer in it. But the thing that people don't understand as visitors is when you come as visitors, it's living there is a much different experience. Like the way a visitor would do Mardi Gras, unless they know someone who can like bring them around, is very different than the way we do Mardi Gras and festivals and Jazz Fest and everyday life. You know, we get spoiled that we have live music 7 nights a week. Probably Austin does too, I'm sure.
Under
but
normal circumstances.
yeah,
yes,
oh, totally. Same here. But you know, it's a big little city. The city's only about like 400 something thousand.
With the things you were talking,
and-
so like a perfect example. Well, not only the burlesque show, but then you took me to a really great place after. What was that bar called that we went to?
I think Black Penny.
Yeah, Black Penny. That's what
Yeah.
it's called. Is there something about like especially coming from a tourism background? Are there certain things you want to kind of keep?
Totally.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, there's a couple of little places that we keep really local, which, you know, unfortunately New Orleans has taken
We
a
have
big
2
hit.
million daily viewers, so you just blew
Oh,
it
totally.
for Black Penny. And now we're gonna be selling Black
So they
Penny merch tomorrow.
specialize. They specialize in canned beers, so and shots of Jameson.
No, it's
So
good. I love
No, there's certain parts of it, unfortunately the city's taken a kind of a crazy hit. Well, of course, like everywhere else, taken a hit during the last 7 months or so. But it's been one shining light is that it's been kind of nice to like walk around and like see your neighbors and get to know without 10 million tourists in town, and to kind of get to experience the city again, like with just the locals in there.
So what's Halloween going to be like?
Oh my gosh. So we are still doing Halloween.
Like,
there's only 4 of us.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah. So I live in the Quarter, and I live on Esplanade and Burgundy. So on the edge, on the more residential side of the French Quarter. And my neighbors and I are big costumers, as we met.
No, you did it well. You did it well.
So we
I
are actually,
it.
instead of going out for Halloween, she has a beautiful wraparound corner balcony, second story, like looking over the French Quarter. And so we are actually going for the Addams Family as a collective group. So I'm going to be Morticia. Yeah. But we're getting like gung-ho dressed to the nines.
Are you doing hold on, are you doing like the whole crew?
Oh yeah. There's 6 of us.
Is someone doing Thing? Is that the hand?
The hand, yes. We have an it.
No, isn't it the
Yes, we have Thing.
Okay.
So my friend is going to be Wednesday, the girl who lives in the space where my neighbor. So she got a custom wig made at Fifi Mahoney's that has a big hand on top of it. So she has the long braids as Wednesday and the big hand.
Gotcha.
So.
Cool.
But yeah, we're committed to costuming. Mardi Gras is still a TBD, but we'll be doing something. We'll be covered in glitter one way or the other.
Fuck yeah. And you share that commitment?
Absolutely.
Love it. When I was visiting, or not visiting, I came there for work. This really blew my mind. Like the block from the Airbnb that I was at, there was this gigantic collapse of, I think it was the Hard Rock Hotel, which is so crazy to see it happen like in a city center. It's not like something like that can't collapse without impacting everything around it. In New Orleans, and especially that quarter area, it's not gigantic. So
it's 12 by 7 blocks.
Yeah, and it shut down a lot around it, and there were some pretty horrific circumstances of like people still being in there. And like, what's the current state on that?
Well, every New Orleans local is not real happy about it, but they're slowly starting to deconstruct it bit by bit.
It was a year ago.
It's been a year in October, since October. The challenge is, like you said, it's in a historic neighborhood, so it's surrounded by historic buildings, like centuries-old buildings, and so they're trying to cause the least amount of destruction around it.
These people are entrepreneurial and they're passionate about their industry, and like they will land on their feet and they'll create something else that's great. But like we want to give them a platform, and this is just this fucking shitty time that sucks that there's so many countries that are better equipped for taking care of businesses. If that's like, I get that the airlines need to be taken care of and stuff like that, but also the Holy Rollers and the Threadgills and stuff need to be that, because that's more of a part of the fabric. No one from Baltimore isn't like, yeah, we got a Southwest hub here, we're real proud of it. Like that's not, we get attached to these places that are getting shut down, and so we want to give them a platform and get them out there. So
there's actually this incredible program that launched in New Orleans. So there in New Orleans, there's every Mardi Gras parade has a crew that goes with it. It's KREWE, and so it's essentially like members of every Mardi Gras parade. And so there's one in New Orleans. It's kind of like an avant-garde, like artsy Bywater crew called the Crew of Red Beans. And so we go to this. We go to their parade every year. And so
I dug into both your social, and I feel like I saw pictures of you. You had kind of like I think it's called like cell shading, like that kind of animation style where you have like really stark dark lines drawn on your face.
You have to create your costume with beans. So it's like lentils and black beans and whatever, because red beans is a big part of New Orleans culture. And so they have shifted to be they launched this program called Feed the Second Line, I believe. So New Orleans has so many culture bearers like Mardi Gras Indian chiefs and these old musicians that have multi-generational jazz players in New Orleans, and all these historic icons that can't work right now. And so this organization, this volunteer crew, put together these programs that they're fundraising to bring groceries and help these folks with their bills. And they're selling like cool merch created by New Orleans artists to be able to raise this money to like deliver groceries to these what is New Orleans without our culture bearers? Like we need these old dudes and old ladies to that have been around forever to perpetuate this tradition. And
who is that super cool woman that you showed me? I'm totally blanking, but you showed me that she was in this dress that was like a peacock.
Mia X.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah, she was like, she's so badass. So, she was one of the like hip hop icons from like the 90s, like this hardcore like female rapper, like really, really, really super badass. And so she's actually transitioned into, I mean, she's still a New Orleans icon, but she is also a wonderful chef. And so she has a cookbook that's out.
Awesome.
Yeah. And it's all these, in the cookbook, it's all these like quotes from her mom, like these life lessons from her mom and grandma that are like lessons for like New Orleans women that we need to know.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
And you see yourself staying?
I do. I travel a lot, and every time I go somewhere else, I'm like, oh, it'd be cool to live here, like in New York or in LA or all these places. But after 4 or 5 days, I'm like, it's cool to visit, but it's too easy to come back. Like New Orleans gets in your bones in like a funny way.
Did you have that concern about Austin or even Houston when you moved there?
Well, when I first moved and I knew that I was relocating and they asked me how I felt about relocating to Texas, I said, yeah, sure. And in my head, I was like, just not Houston, not Houston. They relocated me to Houston.
It just stereotypically, what was Houston just in the worst way? Judge
I
the book by its
don't know
cover. What was
why.
Houston?
In Louisiana, we stereotype Houston as very boring and cookie cutter and just, and I'm gonna hate to say this, but white. But
How
like,
dare
I
you.
know, so but when I lived there, I was there for about 5 years, and indeed, I did say, hey, I talked to
Have you been there the last 5 years before coming
the
here?
last 5 years, yeah. So
That stereotype is interesting to me.
So, and that's why I did evolve, and I've realized that each market in Texas is radically different from one another, and you can't stereotype them, as one big whole.
Sure.
And I've come to appreciate Houston because it is way, way more different ethnically. It's so culturally different, and there's so much diversity, especially when it comes to food and culture and everything. However, it's still a concrete jungle. And for
Yes.
me, I had to have that conversation to where it's like, I need something that's that hits closer to home. If I
Yeah.
have to stay in Texas, then I'm going to have to move to Austin because it has a lot more of that music, those
Yeah.
arts, all of that. When it comes to cultural diversity in Houston, I'm not touting Houston's diversity at all because it's actually glorious. But I came to appreciate that it took me over 2 years to make real friends there. And it's not going to be the friends like I have with Sarah.
Had you ever lived anywhere else before?
Actually, no.
So I had not lived anywhere else before moving to Austin, and I lived by myself and worked from home. So I feel your pain on that, but I also feel that like the thing that it's been 5 years, and the thing that's kept me here is what I thought was my complete inability to make friends, is that there's this community has embraced it. And I feel like there is some connective tissue of the fact that we're all kind of transplants,
Yeah.
which kind of sucks from in a lot of ways, Austin is super different from New Orleans in that it's been so not just even gentrified, but just there is so many people have willingly left Austin. And then there's kind of this like new Silicon Valley that's developing here that I think there's such a low percentage of like Austinites here that they're actually called unicorns, that you're getting a very different experience. I think they're both similar sized and accessible in terms of like getting to the different pockets. And they're both somewhat unique. New Orleans is way more unique, but they're both cool, kind of like standout places in America. But like you and I already share a common thread because we're both transplants here. I don't know anyone actually that's from Austin. So like I think there's something really cool about that.
Yeah, I agree.
I want both of you to answer without conferring with each other that without giving away your like hidey hole, like the thing that you love and don't want to share with anyone. What should someone do, a tourist who comes to New Orleans, don't go to the Quarter, do this? What would that thing be?
Don't look at me.
Yeah,
Ready?
both of you,
So I love the Quarter. Don't go to Bourbon Street. That's
No,
the big.
don't go to the whole Quarter.
Don't go to the Quarter.
Outside
Okay.
of the Quarter.
Okay.
Excluding quarter.
Go to the Bywater. The Bywater is like this little, not little. It's this beautiful artsy community. I mean, you can walk there from the French Quarter. There's beautiful like street art. There's really wonderful restaurants. It's a little more of like an artist residence that lives there that's taken up the space. It's a super mixed community, which is really beautiful. I mean, it's like on the Mississippi River. There's a beautiful park. Like it's something that unfortunately a lot of folks when they come to New Orleans, they think all they think is the French Quarter and Bourbon Street, and they don't leave.
I think a ton. Yeah, I think a
Yeah,
huge
and you
amount
can
of
see
yeah.
the whole French Quarter in
Yeah.
like 2 days. So if you're here for a week, you got to really get out of there.
Yeah.
And we have some really beautiful parks. Like City Park in Mid City is super beautiful, and it's nerd fact, it's the largest collection of live oak trees in North America.
Fucking nerd.
Right? I know. Shut up.
No, that's cool. That's awesome. I love that. That's great.
So it's really beautiful. It's like good green space.
And for those who don't know, those are the like giant sprawling trees that you see in like Django Unchained or something like those like
With, like,
those like
moss and,
plantation,
like,
yeah, but
yeah.
like but these giant like house size
Like 400-year-old trees.
yeah, super
Yeah.
cool. That was such a wonderful, eloquent answer. I really want you to be like, go to the Dave and Buster's like, by the airport.
Top golf.
Never. I would never. Metri, no. Go to the wank. No, I honestly, I was going to say the Bywater, but
She took it.
I
Move on.
Yeah, so
Get over it.
I guess, I guess it depends on your style. As a person, you really have to identify yourself and accept it. If you like basic things and you might be considered what they call unquote unquote basic bitch, then maybe try Uptown. Look at the Midtown things, but
these are people who are coming to the quarter to party.
So if they're coming to the
So
quarter
maybe
to party,
So
then
don't say like a museum, although I know that there are great museums, including what was it, the World War II museum?
Yeah.
But what's another area? It's not necessarily a party, but just like what's another area to go into like indulge
okay.
outside of the quarter?
What's that?
Magazine Street.
So that's what I was thinking. I lived right on the edge of Uptown, more or less, trickling into more of the Garden District. And I think that
really
there
like.
are some super funky places over there. You really, if you're going to party and you're trying to exclude the French Quarter and downtown area, I'm still standing by Bywater. I think that is the top. But then definitely check out those outer circuit uptown dive bars that include the Saint and Snake and Jake's.
Snake and Jake's.
Whoa, you went deep there.
I went in a deep hole with Snake and Jake's.
Is that somehow connected to Jake the Snake, which was a very popular wrestler in the 90s, I believe?
Yeah, I can't confirm nor deny.
Okay. Appreciate
That
that.
is
You have to say its full name. The Snake and Jake's Christmas Lounge.
yes,
Oh, that-
the lounge. Yeah, it's the Christmas lounge, not club.
Really do not understand how you left that out, but I'm glad that we have that now. So like year round, there's I'm gonna blank on the fucking name and it'll be in the podcast. I'll fucking put it down. There's a place here that's 365 Christmas. Oh, and I'm a bad Austinite for not knowing this, but yeah, we have one of those here. It's probably not as cool as Jake the Snake or Snake
Well, I
Jake's
mean,
or
at Snake and Jake's, if you go topless,
Snake and
girls.
Jake's. Oh, is this supposed to be like steak and shake or shake steak?
Oh no.
But there was
This-
topless? Yes? Please go.
You're like,
Please
wait,
continue.
It's like you said topless. What did you mean?
Yes,
Topless?
Yes.
Yeah, so I think the general rule of thumb when you go to Snake and Jake's Christmas Lounge is that if you go topless as a woman, you get your drinks for free that night.
Awesome.
Yeah.
And
So
something about if you get stabbed, drinks are free or something.
Ooh.
There's
Oh, yeah.
something like
it's really shaky. Try not to get stabbed. That'd be cool.
You can try, but you know.
it's the kind of bar that you don't know where it is when you're sober, and somehow at 2 or 3 in the morning you just end up there.
Like an oasis in the middle of the desert.
and,
Yeah.
exactly. And
Yeah.
then the next day you're like, where the hell is that bar? My car is there. I don't know where it is. It's
You
kind
know
of a mess.
what though? I'd come to think of it, if we're really looking for a good time and you want to dance and have some really good live music,
I
La
do.
Bon Ton. I mean, La Bon Ton is, and I'm not trying to give away our local secret, but La Bon Ton is one of my favorite spots to go and hide away and just have some really good times with my friends and completely enjoy the atmosphere. It's good music, good vibes, good people, always. And if you disrupt that and the environment around you, then it would be known.
Okay.
Yeah.
Good to know.
It's a great uptown spot right off of Magazine, and I mean it's a much smaller side of Tipitina's essentially,
Gotcha.
a much more intimate thing, but it is a beautiful, one of my most favorite spots to go to.
Gotcha. Question is, as white women, how do you feel about, like, you're in basically like a cultural epicenter, a historical epicenter, something that is uniquely distinct to the United States. You know, I already have kind of a feel, like an assumption for you what the answer to this question is because of your participation in Preservation Hall and you, how you identify and kind of represent as a member of the community, but just both you and even just like your cool friends that were here before, like you just a group of white people, I'm white, whatever, like, what is it like specifically in a place like that really identifies to like Creole culture? And I think it's just more connected to like the jazz community, African Americans. It's old, like that's not the same as Austin. Like, how do you feel existing in that kind of identity, and how do you coexist? How do you contribute? How do you work with your privilege, whatever? Like, how does that work for you guys?
In New Orleans?
Yep.
Yeah. That's a great question. So,
I'm really good at questions.
I know. So New Orleans historically, I mentioned earlier, is kind of has kind of always been an island. Like New Orleans has, in our 300-year history, has had, you know, women owning property before most of America, has had free people of color before most people, has had it's just been a little bit more open and a little bit more of a melting pot.
And again, I think that the preservation example is really good.
Totally,
too.
yeah.
Like pushing to be like, fuck what everyone else around us is saying. Like, this is what we're doing. We know that.
Because, you know, screw what you look like. Like, we're creating music. This is what we're doing.
And, art. And,
something that's really interesting in New Orleans is we talk about Creole and Cajun food. It's actually just Creole food that's from New Orleans. Cajun food is from the rest of Louisiana, from Acadiana, from Cajun country, a little bit more, hour or two out. So New Orleans is really, it's Creole food. And New Orleans has a lot of...
But is that culture not in New Orleans?
It's, you know, it's a little bit more of like historically like the hunter trapper, actually French Canadians that came down and settled more of the land outside of New Orleans. Gotcha. New Orleans just celebrated its tricentennial 2 years ago in 2018, and so as a 300-year-old city, you know, of course, history's really deep. Like it's known all over the world. It's been French, Spanish, French again, and now
they had that Louisiana Purchase. I heard they used a Groupon. Can you confirm or deny?
I can't, but I will let you know.
I saw it on the internet. So
yeah. I think I got emails about that. But yeah, no, participating in it, you know, I have a lot of diverse friends. People tend to be really respectful of their elders in New Orleans, no matter what they look like, where they come from. It's a really interesting city in terms of racial divide. You know, it's not uncommon to be sitting at some dive bar that's, you know, cash only dive bar, and in it is a CEO and a low income, like blue collar worker next to, you know, a bartender next to a musician next to whoever, and you know, it's not uncommon for them to strike a conversation and to be really friendly with each other. That wall comes down a little bit more than I've seen in other cities, which I think is super cool. Like, you know, you can kind of be yourself a little bit more because everyone else is being themselves, and it's a really special place.
How does New Orleans vote?
New Orleans is a blue state in a city in a sea of red around Louisiana.
Boston.
Yeah, exactly. Yes. That's why I feel like we relate pretty well with that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Food, music.
Absolutely.
But as it relates to your personal experiences, and even just like when you're in high school and stuff, I guess it's more that when you live in the city, but like, were you cognizant of these differences? I just feel like it was probably more in your face, especially with Katrina and whatnot, than other people our age had growing up.
Wait, say that one more time.
So I'm just like, you were probably more privy to racial divides and adversity, and the difference between, even though you share a geographic area, that your life is very different than members of the African American community, especially in a Katrina era type area, that, like, you know, someone growing up in like Bloomington, Indiana wouldn't be as privy to. So.
I mean, I think living and being raised in the South in general, especially with the cusp of the generational change that has happened recently. We've had the boomers and then now the millennials. They're all making very radical changes to what everybody has thought as a daily norm. It's become a culture shock for a lot of the older people, and it's something that they were not raised as understanding as okay. So it was created a natural stereotype for the kids that they had created and raised as their own, and wanted to raise them in those same morals and beliefs. But, you know, with time and the nature of it all, like we didn't feel that. I felt personally, yes, where we grew up in our younger years, during high school and whatnot, there was a bit of a disconnect. But then growing up and then living in New Orleans as an independent and on your own, and understanding the gumbo pot of people and the culture that is there, you really understand and appreciate the fact that New Orleans is exactly what it's always been. And it is just a port of people that have there. It's full of diversity, and it's beautiful.
Gotcha.
And in New Orleans, the neighborhood, the Treme, is actually the oldest African-American neighborhood in the country.
Great show as well.
I know. It's an occasion. When you're from here, you're like...
She agreed with me, and I was like, actually, no, fuck
I thought about it and was like, I'm going to stand my ground. No, it's a pretty good show.
They told the story, all right?
They told a good story, yeah. But yeah, having that neighborhood in the city is a good representation of the city. And
love it. I have a similar not a similar question, much more fluffier question. This is what we're going to end on. So I know 2 places that each of you have gone to, and I'm just curious about which you prefer and why. Let's just do like a quick 30-second answer. Then we're going to wrap it up. So Thailand and Singapore, what's better and why?
Stop it.
No.
What?
What's different between Thailand and
No,
Singapore?
what's better? Like, what did you like better between traveling to Singapore and Thailand, and why?
Oh man. Okay, well, I like each country for their own. I'm going to start with that. I always will. Singapore is like the most perfect Disneyland / Disney World you could ever imagine, and the safest place ever. Don't chew gum, nor get an Airbnb. Thailand, the nicest people ever, and be prepared to enjoy some spice. But also don't be scared to swim in the sea in the middle of the night. Don't worry, there might not be sharks. There might be sharks. Just trust the locals.
And you went to Phuket, right?
Phuket, yeah. I did. Yeah,
Okay.
it was fun. It was okay. It was touristy, honestly.
That is the more.
I
tourist
wouldn't
area.
I wouldn't do
Chiang
it
Mai
again.
in the north is really the place to go with all the temples.
You know, and I
everything.
went straight across the peninsula and went to Konom and Surat Thani, and that is what I really enjoyed. I went to this little place called Jambay, and the guy who owns this piece of property with all of these little cabanas, he's a film producer, the coolest guy I have ever met. And honestly, the community of people
Sorry.
there, besides you, of course. I mean, 30, come on, don't worry.
These
That's always,
inflammatory statements.
all of these discussions exclude you and
Thank
them.
you.
Don't worry.
Appreciate it.
But yeah, so it's just the most welcoming group of people that I've ever met, and I will 1,000% go many more times in my life.
So Thailand.
Thailand.
Okay. As in that's your answer. Thailand or Singapore, Thailand. You have to choose one.
Thailand.
Okay. Cuba or Peru?
Cuba forever.
Oh wow! Immediately, didn't you?
I
have to
mean,
fucking-
I'm like
pretty cool,
waiting
right?
till we can go back.
It is pretty cool.
Actually, to come full circle, I went with Preservation Hall Jazz Band.
Oh, that's
they were,
right. Yeah,
They
yeah.
were performing at the Havana Jazz Festival. It was my first time going. Man,
Havana's
it was
so
cool.
cool.
Oh,
It's-
it was
yeah.
so cool. I can't wait to go back. Met some really cool people there. Learned that music wasn't as easy to find as I thought. Like, not like in a touristy place, but
Yeah,
like
yeah.
underground, like local music.
Yeah.
So one of the best nights we had was at it was like a community center in the basement, and it was like 16-year-olds and 60-year-olds all dancing. Turns out I can't dance, but it was awesome. Yeah, we're actually looking to go back. I want to go back for their carnival.
So fuck Peru is what you're saying?
Peru was cool. Fuck Peru. Cuba, any day.
Gotcha. Well, the three of us will go to Peru and we'll do ayahuasca and we'll do a new episode. and
Totally.
we'll take it from
Sold.
there. Yeah. Okay. Well, thank you guys so much for being on. I really
Thank you.
appreciate it. Welcome to Austin.
Thank you.
Look forward to getting to know each other and
Yeah.
just kind of like share our Austin experiences.
Sharing the sugar.
So good to have you here.
know.
Again, only the second time we've hung out, but it's cool that like I've seen you in your home and now you see me in my
Totally.
home. And yeah, thank you guys so much. Appreciate
Thanks.
Thank you.
it. All right. You have to clap. You have to clap. After peace.
Oh.